Hujambo, beautiful people. Or maybe I should say, Hujambo, powerful people. Because you really are powerful, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Welcome back to the Espresso Talk Today podcast show, the show where we dive deep into the real and raw chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces, and how to calm, control, and curb that chaos. I'm your host, Amma Robin, and today we're talking about something that hits close to home for many of us, even if we don't know it. It's the C word. Now, as a woman, when people talk about the C word, I begin to cringe, but that's not the word I'm talking about today. And no, it's not chaos. It's a part of it, though. The C word that we're going to talk about today is complacency. Had you already guessed it? I'm sure you had. But I am having my curcuma cinnamon pepper coffee today for this uncommon show. I've got a lot to say about complacency, the dangers it causes, and how to overcome it. So grab your espresso or tea. Tea drinkers are welcome here too. Sit back and let's get to it. We're going to dive deep and we're going to get real. And I hope that y'all are ready for this. Aquaba, welcome, my dear brothers and sisters and my beloved gender-neutral and gender-non-conforming folks. I am so happy that you're here today. I'm so happy, I'm so grateful to have my community here with me today to talk about the C word, to talk about complacency. You might be asking, okay, I know what the other C word is, but what is complacency? Great, glad you asked. Questions are always welcome here, and that's where we're going to start. Complacency is a quiet but powerful enemy. It's that feeling of satisfaction with the status quo, where we think everything's okay, even when it's not. It's saying, it's all right, things could be better, but I'm okay with how they are. It is that satisfaction of, we've made progress, but I'm happy with this level. Sure, I want things to be better, but I can be happy here. Well, it's when we see injustices happening all around us, racism, sexism, poverty, voting problems, environmental issues. But then we choose to stay silent. We think someone else will handle it. Or we believe that just being aware of the problem is enough. It's important, but it's not enough. It's, when we think that this is good enough for me. Now, I am no enemy of good enough. But when I see an injustice, when I see something wrong, my thought is to do something about it. But complacency is to say, someone else will do something. I don't have the power to do that. It's none of my business. Well, let's actually look at what complacency can look like. Here's one example. A person living in an urban area affected by pollution might recognize the issue, but then does nothing to raise awareness or to advocate for cleaner air or better regulations. They just think, this is just how it is. And then they leave it to others to fight for environmental changes or justice, even though they can see that the community's health is suffering. Yep, it's that's just the way it is. That is the mantra for complacency. Do you recognize it? Well, get ready for a few more examples throughout the show. I'm not going to mention it right now, but I'm going to sprinkle them throughout the show. It's because complacency looks so many different ways. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once talked about what will be remembered are not the words, even the hateful words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And he wasn't just referring to the absence of words. He was talking about the absence of action. When we don't actively fight injustice, we're not just being neutral. We're being complacent, perhaps even complicit. We're allowing these injustices to continue because our silence and our inaction are seen as acceptance. We can see this happen in a lot of different ways. My mother often talks about, she grew up under legal segregation, and she thought, this is terrible, but what can I do? Well, there's a complacency because people did do stuff about it. She was a child, so, I let that go. But now, of course, legal segregation is over. But yet there is still segregation in America in housing, in education, in healthcare, in economic empowerment. Segregation is still very much a part of American society. But because we reached a certain level, we had that incredible Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision and others that took away legal segregation, we say, well, things are better now. They're not perfect, but they're better. And so there's nothing for me to do. That is complacency. You may be wondering now, okay, who am I talking to? Who is the audience? Who is this message for? First of all, I think you know who you are. You know if you are just accepting this is just the way things are. Even though you know it can't be and you know it should be better. You know if that's the way you think. I'm not trying to single out anybody. So what I'm saying here is that actually I'm calling out everybody. Everybody, including myself. Today, I'm talking to everyone who decides to be happy, saying things like, it ain't great, but things are better than they used to be. Wow, I cringed just hearing that. And I realized that is complacency. I'm going to stop for a second because I just want to also point out that this is not any kind of a show where I am naming or blaming or shaming anyone. This is not that kind of show. This is a raise awareness. Let's talk about this issue. Then let's do something about it. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Not even at myself. I'm not shaming anyone. Not even myself. No way. That's not what we're doing here. This isn't about naming or shaming or blaming. This is about learning and empowering. This is a Black empowerment show, and that's what we're going to do. So when I say I'm calling out everyone here, that means as a community, we as a people, we can do better. And, when people say, well, it ain't great, but it's good enough, there is some truth in that. There's just enough truth in that to keep us from demanding more and demanding better from this society. That's true. Legal segregation is gone, but de facto, or America is still a very segregated society, but yet we are complacent because it's better. Yes, we have had a Black president. We might even have a second. Fingers crossed. But that does not mean that we have gone post-racial or that racism is in the past. Not post-racial does not exist, and racism is definitely not in the past. But because things are a bit better, We've reached that level where we feel we can be complacent. And yes, many Black people hold high positions in companies, organizations, and the government. But tokenism is still a part of Black life. Isolation is still the norm. John Henryism, in which we, work so hard that we end up damaging our health. We work harder than our white counterparts to succeed. And damaging our health has become accepted and even expected. Racial battle fatigue caused by microaggressions and other repetitive racial stress injuries is still the norm. Racial violence against Black people by police, private security, or other random people has been normalized. In fact, violence against Black bodies continues to be the norm. But because there's outrage about it now, we do take certain steps, it's not getting better. In fact, I sometimes think it's getting worse. Sometimes think it's regressing because we've become complacent. Even losing reproductive rights, our reproductive rights as women has been is in jeopardy now, because after the Roe versus Wade decision way back in the 70s, we became complacent that we would always have these rights, and all of a sudden they're being chipped away at. Then all of a sudden, the Dobbs decision came down, and those rights are gone for many women, for a huge number of women, and they don't want to stop there either. They want to take it away. Reproductive rights for all women. They want to take that away for all women, and even start taking away, birth control, all kinds of things, because we've become complacent. We got comfortable, and we let our guard down. Now, now we're back. We're back, and we're fighting for it. But we have a lot of work to do. Well, those were all examples of what complacency can do. But let's read another example. I have here a white person sees news reports about police brutality against Black people, but believes it doesn't directly affect them, the white person. They might express sympathy in private conversations, but they avoid joining protests, they avoid signing petitions, they don't support policy changes that could address the issue. They might think, well, it's terrible, but there's nothing really that I can do about it. That is complacency. That's let someone else do something about it. Or that's, this doesn't affect me directly, I don't have time for this. You recognize it. As I said, I'm not blaming or shaming or naming here, but let's just be honest and authentic today, because that's what we need. We need to be able to recognize complacency, because it is our enemy. It's our enemy in the midst that keeps us from doing things, keeps us from protecting our reproductive rights, from fighting racism, from attacking police brutality, from fighting for our rights, while at the same time thinking, being, seduced into thinking that things are better now and they're good enough. Well, I have some other things I'm asking here. Why is complacency so dangerous? I've answered that a little bit here, but let's look at how complacency is a tool used by white supremacists and other oppressive systems. Let's look at how the powers that be use complacency. But we've had a lot of discussion here already. Let's take our first breather break. This gives all of us a chance to breathe for a minute. When things get intense, I like to breathe. Sometimes I forget, but this is a moment when I'm going to intentionally watch my breath. I hope you will too. I'll see you in a minute. And y'all know that I love this song.
Turn me up in the headphone. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and vomit nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Trying to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible.
Aquaba back, my beautiful and powerful community. I'm so glad that you stayed in the building with me today to discuss this issue. And I hope you don't feel that you're being blamed or shamed, because honestly, that's not my intention. I just want to open up discussion and get real today. That's what we do here, right? Well, we've been talking about why complacency is so dangerous. And I also want to bring up now how the powers that be use complacency and encourage us to be complacent, to have that satisfaction that things are good enough, there's nothing more for me to do. They want us to think that way because they know that there's much more that needs to be done. And they know that the stuff that we have, the rights that we have now and the powers we have now, that if we don't keep fighting for those are going to get taken away. Just like it happened in the Dobbs case, where a woman can't terminate a pregnancy. That's just the beginning. Okay, so let's talk about how white supremacist patriarchal systems encourage complacency. It's actually very basic, and it's so basic that it's almost genius. That we are rewarded for being complacent. Yep, when you want to encourage a child to do something, you give them a reward. After they've done it, what do? They'll do it again. That's normal. That's normal human behavior. When you're rewarded for something, you want to keep doing it, keep getting more rewards. So we are rewarded for being complacent. It may be antithetical to what I just said. It may sound that way, and it is. But let me explain myself here. When you are complacent about things, you become part of the in crowd. You're acceptable. You're one of the pretty people. You become the safe and acceptable and successful, person in the crowd. When you are complacent, when you don't fight back, it's a way of making people do what they want. When you start speaking up about stuff, that takes you out of complacency and that takes you out of the group. But when you can just smile and laugh at a racist joke, or when you see police brutality and police violence and you just kind of turn your head, well, then you become acceptable. You get rewarded for that. Here's a nice job for you for not speaking up. Here's a nice house for you. You get a nice mortgage, you get a nice house, you're in a nice neighborhood because you don't talk about. In fact, you even chuckle and laugh at the racist jokes. And you blame black people for police violence, or you don't complain when you see racism, or you don't speak up for yourself, or when you experience racism, you just swallow it and you blame yourself. Then you get reward. Now it's different when you start speaking up. Taking a stand against injustice is punished. So, see, a very basic thing it does. You get the reward and then the punishment. Let's talk about punishment. Well, you start saying that, wait, that joke was racist. That's inappropriate. You start marching at protests against police violence. You start writing articles about white supremacy. Then jobs might be hard for you to find. People might begin to ridicule you. You might be isolated. You might even be attacked. I've been wearing this ever since October 10th, because it took a few days to get it. I've been wearing a patch about the genocide in Gaza that says stop the genocide, human rights for all, and has a flag the Palestinian flag on it. I have pledged to wear this every single day. At first, until there was a ceasefire. No, now until Palestine is free. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I'm walking down the street wearing this patch everywhere, every day. Sometimes, in fact, most of the time, I'm getting responses of, thank you so much. I love that I love that sticker. Wow, thank you so much for supporting us. But there are other times when I'm getting really mean and angry and hostile looks, or when people will not help me. Like over at the store. I was at the store the other day, and the cashier refused to help me, to check my groceries, and I have to walk past a synagogue to get to this grocery store. Now, I have no problem with the synagogue, but there's security out front. I can understand that they may need security. And the security guards, when they see my sticker, they watch me very closely. Very closely. I mean, so there is, I knew that wearing this sticker, that is basically saying that I'm opposed to genocide and to the killing and slaughter and rape and displacement of, 100,000 people, that was going to have a reaction. And I don't know when I approach people what that reaction will be. But there is a reaction, and sometimes it's a punishment. Being watched by security is scary, and then all of a sudden being refused service is scary. It makes me angry, but it's the punishment. Taking a stand sometimes it means that you're going to be punished. If I'm not wearing this sticker and I'm acting like it doesn't really matter to me what's going on in Gaza, I'll be rewarded. I get the smiles and the service, and I get the casual look, glance from the security guards, no problem. But I'm not the only one. There was at the Berlin, Olympics, when the black men put their hands up in the air, their fists up in the air. Wow, I mean, we look back at that today like, that is a powerful move. That was bold. Yes, it was. But they also were stripped of their titles and their medals, and one of them lost his marriage, and one of them, they weren't able to get jobs for taking a stand. Martin Luther King's approval rating, we talk about him now like, oh, yeah, we love everything he said and wrote and did and all that. Well, right before he was assassinated, his approval rating was about 20%. Because he was speaking out against militarism, against attacking, the countries of people of color, Vietnam in particular, against, when he's talking about economic equality. Well, then they said, no. You are out of your lane here. That's not what you're supposed to talk about. And because of that, we're going to, attack your reputation. We're going to isolate you. We're going to take away your funding. We're going to, paint you as this terrible, weak, degenerate type of person instead of the brilliant, powerful, amazing thinker and man that he was. That was the attack. And it cost him a lot. And in fact, it isolated him to the point where it cost him his life. So activism does have its costs, but it does make a difference. Activism is actually dangerous to the system, which is why it is punished. Now, if the system likes you, if the system is supporting and rewarding and accepting and loving you, something ain't right. Because the system isn't designed to work for most people. It's designed to work for very few. And the system loves when you're complacent. The system will reward your complacency. But complacency is actually dangerous for us. It may feel more comfortable. More comfortable, but we're not here to be comfortable. But it may feel more comfortable, but it's dangerous. And let me tell you some other ways that it is. Complacency perpetuates injustice. As I was saying, by not speaking out or taking action, we indirectly support the systems of oppression, the systems that are oppressing us. Silence is interpreted as approval. and it empowers those who uphold the racist, patriarchal, capitalistic system. A second way is that it creates a false sense of accomplishment. Yeah, it's important to feel good about accomplishing something, and we might feel good about the progress that we've made as Black people, socially, politically, economically. But we know that there's so much farther that this society where we need to go and what we deserve to have and all of that. But when we've made a certain amount of progress, it's easy to feel complacent and comfortable with just that. Third, complacency takes away empathy. It diminishes empathy. When we repeatedly see injustice but do nothing, we start to become desensitized to it. In the beginning, we're watching the films and the videos and the horror from Gaza. When we keep seeing it, over and over and over again, all of a sudden, when we're complacent about it and not fighting against it and keeping it in the forefront of our minds that we're watching a genocide happen in real time, well, we're not thinking in that way. If we have the mindset of complacency, then we become desensitized to it, to the horrors, to the violence. And it's the same way with seeing police violence in America. If we're not actively thinking and fighting against it, and we become complacent to it, well, we also become comfortable with it. And the next word, from complacency to comfort, the next one is complicit. We don't want to go there. We don't want to go to any of these places. But complicit, that's the worst. That is the worst. And finally, complacency, it hinders collective action. When you're not involved or engaged, you're as an individual, and we all are just individuals. You're not going to participate in the collective action, and collective action is where the power really is. A complacent person is kind of the weak link, and the chain is actually only going to be as strong as the weakest link. And that weakens then our collective power, which is how we can make real change. But I am going to be straight with you here. I think I always have been. But complacency is being silent about the presence of injustice and poverty and discrimination and violence and all other forms of hardships. It does make it seem that things are good enough and I can live with this. And that's what's happened with our reproductive rights. And that's going to be and that's why now we are where we are. So collective action, though, is powerful, it's sustainable, and it's more sustainable in the long term, even than individual efforts. And remember, we are a community, and our collective action does create change, and it is an antidote to the illness of complacency. Well, I know that was a lot. I do know that. So I think now's a good time to take another breather break. Yes, that's a good time. We're going to do that. So take a minute to breathe, think, stretch, do push-ups, take a walk, grab some coffee or tea, whatever speaks to your soul. This is some great stuff. It's important stuff, but it's difficult stuff, and we all need a short break. When we return, we're going to discuss ways to overcome complacency. I'll be back in a minute. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Grind to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and vomit nose. Anything is possible. Yeah. Grind to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything.
Hey there, it's Amma Robin, and welcome back, Aquaba back. I'm so glad that you're stuck with me. I know I got a little deep and heavy there, but I think this was important to say and important to remember. Now, before I get to how to overcome apathy, complacency, I want to just reiterate something, that how complacency does erode empathy and takes away our compassion because we become desensitized. Now, I do know that we all just can't sit around and look at all, these terrible images, all day long. That's just too heart-wrenching, too gut-wrenching. It is so painful. And I know I'm speaking from personal experience here that sometimes I have to turn the TV off or turn the sound down or close the book or shut the newspaper or, of course, turn off the social media and just take a break because it can be so overwhelming, and then I can come back and I can still feel the empathy and feel the pain too. So it is difficult and uncomfortable, but it's important. And I encourage you, though, to be compassionate towards yourself and to do what you need to protect your mental and emotional health. Take a step away when you need to protect your mental health and be compassionate towards yourself and others. And that requires you. To be compassionate towards others, you really need to be compassionate to yourself and show yourself some grace too. Do that and do it unapologetically and return to fight another day, return to love another day. Just wanted to throw that part in. So how do we fight the seductive pull of complacency? Kind of jumping ahead of myself here because I'm thinking about what I want to say. How do we fight this seductive pull of complacency? And yes, I do believe it is seductive. Just like in the movie, The Matrix, many of us would prefer to take the red pill and just be happy with the status quo, be happy with our lives and how things are, and be happy feeling that it ain't perfect, but it is good enough. I would love that too. But if you haven't taken that pill, or you do actually want to make the world a little bit better and kinder and more just and a happier place, how do you resist the pull of complacency? Well, there are ways. And, moving from passive support to active participation is not a big step. It's not a big leap. So I'm going to share with you some of my 7 ways that I've been using to fight complacency. I don't use them all the time, each one all the time, but I pull this out of my toolbox when I'm feeling that I need it or that I'm sinking into, why can't I just accept things the way they are? Then I say, okay, it's time to go into my toolbox and start fighting against the complacency that is seducing me in. Okay, number 1, educate yourself continuously. Read books, watch movies or documentaries, keep learning in whatever way it is that you learn. Education is a powerful tool. I'm going to say learning rather is a powerful tool. Stay informed about the issues that you care about. Understand their historical context, their cultural context, their, the economic, financial, the different contexts of it. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Think about the current state of how things are and the experiences of those that are directly affected. Continuous learning keeps you motivated and aware and feeling that urgency of action. Another one, number 2, reflect on your personal values. Regularly think about your values and how they align with your actions. Think about the impact of your choices and whether they contribute to the change you wish to see in the world. This personal reflection can help you bridge the gap between your beliefs and your behaviors. Sometimes that can be a big leap because when we're not aware of what's going on, if we're not being reflective about this. A few months ago, we examined our core values. And this was a difficult and lengthy, but it was a helpful exercise, and it was empowering. I had a whole list of core values. It was over 100, and really had to whittle it down to maybe 2 or 3 things that are really, really, really important to me. And having done that work, and that took a couple of months actually, and I do keep returning to it and reviewing it. Then when I knew what was important to me, I knew what I wanted to really focus on. Because let's face it, there's so much going on right now. We cannot do everything, but we can have to focus our energy and our time on the things that are most important to us. Other people will focus on the things that are most important to them. And if we're all doing that, then things are going to happen. Change is going to happen. If you want to look at that list of core values, you can find it on the Espresso Talk Today website in the Power blog. And, do the exercise. It was actually a lot of fun, but it was difficult, and I learned a lot about myself. Okay, number 3, set tangible goals. Avoid making vague commitments. Set specific, achievable goals for your activism. Whether it's volunteering or donating or attending protests or advocating in some other way for policy changes. Just having clear objectives helps you to maintain the focus and the momentum. That's what I said. I wear this sticker, every day. My pledge is to wear it every day until there is, I just said a ceasefire, but until Palestine is free, and that is very clear and actionable for me. But, you can't do everything, so maybe pick out, when you've had your core values, pick out 2 or 3 issues, or maybe just 2, that are very important to you. Heavily commit time and energy and focus into one, and then maybe the other issue, decide, maybe once a month or several times a year I'll get involved, or maybe I'll make a donation to that. It doesn't have to be all, or nothing. It can be, a whole lot here and a bit there and some there too. And that all makes a difference. A third one is join or support grassroots movements. Engage with the grassroots organization that's actively working towards change. These groups have established and effective strategies that can make opportunities for meaningful involvement. You can support their efforts, as I said. Maybe you want to, try to spend a day there volunteering once a week, or maybe that's too much. Just decide what you need to do for you and how you can best help them, in a way that works for you. And like I said, it's not all or nothing. It's a whole lot of in between. Now, this is one of my favorites here. Number 5, challenge your comfort zones. Growth and change often require stepping out of comfort zones. It's it's easy to get into and stay in the comfort zone. And complacency really doesn't help you to get off the couch. It doesn't help you to get out of your comfort zone. So, look at engaging in difficult conversations, challenge prejudiced behaviors, confront injustices, even when it's uncomfortable. But, that's for me as an anti-racist and Black empowerment person. That's what I'm focusing on. Maybe your focus on the issues may be different, but find ways to get out of your comfort zone with those. Pushing these boundaries is essential for personal and societal progress. I've never done this before, but when I started making those stickers, saying stop the genocide and human rights for all, and then wearing the Palestinian flag, this is a very, very, very important issue to me. Genocide's been called the crime of crimes, and I committed myself to wearing these stickers every day and doing more until there's a permanent ceasefire or beyond. But what I'm saying is that I don't really announce my thoughts and activism to anyone who sees me. So it was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone, and it still is, to wear the sticker and let everyone who sees me know this is what I believe. Okay, that was out of my comfort zone. Number 6, hold yourself and others accountable. Accountability is the key, really, to combating complacency. That's right. This is where community comes in, holding yourself to high standards of action and encouraging others to do the same. Yep, our community, constructive accountability can create this culture of active engagement and continuous improvement. And for me, accountability on the Gaza issue means making myself accountable to never accept genocide ever for anyone, and for making other people accountable for their views about genocide. I'm not up in people's face, but I'm saying, look, if you're interested in, let's say, voting rights, well, then what are you doing for that? What are you doing to help promote voting rights? It can be, being out there, voter registration. It can be all kinds of different things, or even just checking in with family members to make sure that they vote, driving people who have trouble getting to the polls, driving them to the polls, on voting day, or helping them to mail their ballot. There's so many different ways to get involved and to make others accountable. And when you're asking people, look, I voted, you can wear the sticker, I voted today, did you? That's accountability too. And finally, the last one, number 7, practice consistent advocacy. Consistency could be twice a year. Consistency could be every single day. Decide what's going to be consistency for you. And it should be a consistent effort rather than sporadic just response. I mean, sometimes you're going to need to respond to maneuver, yes, but that shouldn't be the strategy. Committing to regular actions, whether it's social media, community involvement, or political engagement, consistency ensures that the fight against injustice remains active and visible, and the fight against complacency is continuous. Just focus on the consistency, not complacency. Keep doing whatever you're doing and don't stop until the goal is realized. I have another example now of complacency. And I said I'm not targeting anyone or any group here, but I'm going to use this one. An Asian person witnesses anti-Black racism in their workplace, but chooses to stay silent to avoid conflict. They might overhear discriminatory remarks or see unfair treatment of Black colleagues, but decide not to report it or to stand up against it, thinking it's not my place to get involved. I think a lot of us think that, from every ethnicity and from every, every group, that we see something happen to another group that we think is not my place to get involved. That is complacency. Well, as we reflect on that one, let's take one last breather break. Then we're going to wind it down. This has really been intense, but I think we're going to start lightening it up a bit. I promise. We're stronger together. You see, there's no need to name or shame or blame anyone. We're all out there doing our best, but sometimes we all need to make a little bit of adjustments, and that's what we're doing today. But let's start to wrap this up and take some, breathe, relax, do a body scan, and I will see you in a minute. Yep, we are winding it down now, and I want to just actually wind it up just a little bit, just to look at one more example of complacency. A Latino person might be aware of efforts to suppress the votes of people of color, but then doesn't take any action to combat these measures. They might avoid volunteering for voter registration drives or educating their community about their voting rights, thinking, voting has always been tough, it's not going to change. I think the thing that I really get from these examples is the behavior a little bit, but it's really the mindset. When I think about this, voting has always been tough. It's not going to change. Violence hasn't happened to anyone I know, so it's not that big of a deal. Economic inequality is really too complex for me to make any difference. Or, I have enough to deal with regarding racial issues. I don't want to get involved. This is one, too, I hear a lot. I've got my own problems. And then they just ignore other people's, realizing that all these are our problems, too. Or as I said, not my place to get involved. Here's one. It's terrible, but there's nothing I can do about it. That's often said. And of course, and this is just how it is. And that means just how it's always going to be. See, so it's really the mindset of complacency, more so than the actions, although, of course, one follows from the other. Okay, so winding it down, let's just realize complacency and its evil sibling, complicity, we're going to get into that later, another show, are subtle but dangerous adversaries in our fight, for justice and equality, or fighting for any issue that's important to you. By recognizing these dangers and actively working to overcome them, we can transform passive support into meaningful action. And as I said, I gave you those, 7 ways to do it. It's a small step, It really takes place really within, in your mindset. And then the step is a small step, but it's actually a giant leap. As Dr. King reminds us, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Let's choose action over silence, engagement over apathy, and become active participants in the fight towards justice and equity and environmental justice and voting rights and reproductive rights and all these things that we say we want, but we think we don't have any power to do it, and we expect others to do it for us. So remember that our actions today shape our tomorrow. And please just think about, how do you want your world to look tomorrow? Asante Sana for joining me today on Espresso Talk Today. If you found this episode meaningful, please, please, please share it with your friends and family, your crew, your community, your tribe, everyone. And let's spread the word and inspire others to take action. Asante Sana to all people working towards making this world a better place. We stand in solidarity with you. And so remember, my fellow warriors, know this deep in your soul. You are powerful beyond measure, and together we are invincible. And the real problem with society is white supremacy. Black people are not the problem. If you want to keep discussing or just reading about these issues, then please subscribe to my weekly Black Empowerment newsletter, The No Beat. We discuss lots of different issues there, so get your dose of Black empowerment and liberation every single week. It's never a dull moment, but lots of powerful, uplifting, and liberating moments. You can subscribe at the Espresso Talk Today website, espressotalktoday.com, or on Instagram at Ama Robin L. That's Ama, A-M-A, _ Robin, R-O-B-I-N, _ the letter L. You can also find me on Facebook at my newly opened Espresso Talk Today Black Liberation Lounge. This group is a safe space for us to hold discussions, share thoughts and ideas, feel joy, express sadness, or just breathe. You can also join us on Instagram, where I hold a live discussion every week, usually on Wednesdays. DM me to get the weekly schedule, but join me on Instagram at Ama Robin L. I'm Ama Robin, for Espresso Talk Today. And remember, now more than ever, strength, soul, and reparations. Ashe, community.